Well, hey everybody. Welcome to the Signaler. And today we've got Mark Jauregui with us, principal at Integrated Customer Success. But before we jump into the Signaler, this is our second version of the Signaler. If you missed the last one with Brian Hall about executive change or losing your key sponsor, you should check it out. But what we do every 2 weeks or so is we pick a signal from Sturdy. Sturdy is an applied AI platform. We basically look at all types of data to find signals that influence products, help us reimagine processes, and help us develop better relationships with our customers. So we invited Mark on today to talk a little bit about a signal that might be near and dear to both he and I, actually. And we'll get into it. We're going to talk about overpromise today. And uh, before I even get started and Mark here can introduce himself, we're going to talk about what a customer signal really is. And so what we think about is finding these like flash bulbs that are going off in your business all the time, these gestures or actions that our customers are either intentionally or unintentionally sharing with us that may convey some sort of information that sometimes slips through the cracks or we don't find. So, Mark, I'm anxious to get started. We've got a ton of great content today. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and future audiences. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, good morning, Joel. Thanks for having me on. We're really excited about this session. Mark Jauregui from Integrated Customer Success. I've been in the CS side of businesses for a couple of decades now and started off my career in tech support on the end of a phone and kind of worked my way up through various roles to CCO for a couple companies and really we help our clients focus in on ensuring their CS capabilities are aligned with their stage of growth, current one, and are set up for their next stage of growth. Too often we see them attempting to support the funding stage they're at, and sometimes that's built on a bit of a house of cards to make sure they have a strong foundation to go from. But love this stuff, and you and I've had a couple of previous chats before, and just totally nerd out on all the stuff that you can get, all these signals coming in. The key is, what do you do with those, and then how do you make them actionable from those insights?
Absolutely. And I gotta say, like every time that I talk to you, I think I get like another kind of connector, if you will. So I lived in the same town where Mark lives today, so we share that. We both have lived in the lovely state of Idaho, and I think Mark, you grew up there, right?
Yeah, I grew up there. I'm actually in the Bay Area now, just across the Golden Gate Bridge in a little town
Yeah.
called.
What I just heard is you started your career on the other end of a phone. I started my career dialing. And we're going to talk more about this. I think it's a good sort of a segue. I started my phone dialing out 100 calls a day. It sounds like you started your career having people come inbound 100, probably 100 or however many times a day. So I think you're going to see some of the ping ponging back and forth with our current roles and how we play in our businesses and how we started actually are better aligned than people think. And I think there's something there. So we're going to get into it today and let's talk a little bit about an overpromise. And you know what? It is kind of what it sounds like. What we've detected in business to consumer and consumer to business communications, typically B2B, are signals that oftentimes can really destroy relationships. The dreaded, we call it the dreaded overpromise. The overpromise signal really is when we detect when a customer indicates there's some sort of discrepancy between the product and service that they expected to receive and what they've actually received. And having run large sales teams and large enterprise sales teams, I'm all too familiar with when salespeople embellish, you get going. Sometimes, by the way, it's not malicious. Sometimes it is embellished, but sometimes it's not malicious. It's you get rolling and you talk about the future and the vision. And you can see on the other side of the screen here some of the examples, and I'm sure people can kind of like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about here. But we'll talk about that, and this will be our focus for the day today. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, and talk a little bit about. And I think we've already kind of given a little bit of a segue to this, but like this is a team sport, man. Like you and I, you a CCO, I'm a CRO. Let's talk a little bit about like how this gets going, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're in an ideal world and an ideal team environment. You said it right there. It is a team sport, and it's sales is a hard job. I've been a sales leader as well, so I understand both sides of it. But you guys work really hard to land them, and our job is to help make them successful, realize the value that was promised, ensure there was meeting of the minds up front, and the value promise is what we can deliver. But then help them realize that value, make them referenceable customers so that they're referenceable for sales, and you guys can help land more and get the momentum wheel going like that. And everybody wins. The customers win, our company wins, and it's a great, healthy environment. However, sometimes, as you mentioned, there's some enthusiasm up front, or some things have changed in the product, or customers misinterpret something that's going on. I've seen a number of different things. I've put up a couple examples here of, sell the futures, or we're at the wrong level of services or software for what they actually need. Either we oversold them or undersold them. But for the customers to come out of the blocks on the back foot, it's a hard hole to dig out of, and it consumes a lot of resources. So in today's discussion, Joel and I have been talking, and we're going to lay out some plays. And I don't like to have so much playbooks for everybody, because that can be very specific to a particular business. And playbooks, you got to take a whole bunch of things into consideration, and those evolve over time as well. Like, you don't just set it and forget it. But there's some good baseline motions and processes that we've built together into this product, or into this webinar, that we'll go through later on in the slides. And I think they're good keys to help build your own playbooks for your environment.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind, I was reading, we co-created some of this content. I mean, most of this stuff, by the way, folks, is sort of Mark's brain around, and by the way, we have a really short time. So we're going to move through things really quickly. We want to give you sort of the practical, the tactical, the practical, the tips that, you can kind of think about as maybe you're building some of your first sort of customer success motions to derive value. Maybe you're thinking about updating some of those things because your stage, and Mark talks about this a lot, and I really appreciate when he talks about it, but the stage in your company is today, hopefully isn't going to be the stage that your company's in 6, 8, 12, 18 months from now. So playbooks, great. You got them. Like Mark says, I don't think you can overemphasize. You can't just set them and forget them. Like, it's an evolving, just like relationships evolve and mature, and your business evolves and mature. It's really important. One of the things that I think about here too is a sales leader. Again, it's not always the salespeople. The salespeople, I think sometimes, like, we think about overpromise, like, oh, the salespeople lied. Some do, just like anyone else, and they exaggerate. But I think the other thing to think about, and this, I'm going to put out a plug for this, but I don't think we can underestimate the value of sales enablement and customer success enablement, and aligning those two together. They can't be in separate departments. It's got to be an enablement or a knowledge group that enables people. So we are selling the today and looking towards the future to help our customers realize where we're going, and we're aligned. But probably another half an hour or hour discussion about enablement. And I know Mark has feelings about that as well. Mark, I love this, but you talked about when we were ideating on this session, I was like, man, how's it hit home for you? And you're like, oh, let me go through the volumes, but let me give you some. And so I'll kind of turn it over to you. And I love this. Like, tell me about some of your experiences with the overpromise.
Yeah, we've all heard it before: sell the dream and service the nightmare. I'll preface all this that it doesn't all land on sales though either. Like, and sometimes it's us in CS, like, we aren't delivering right, and sometimes it's our adjacent functions, and we'll get into that in a couple of slides here. But yeah, I've having been in a variety of different industries, MarTech and services, a bunch of different stuff, I've seen all sorts of crazy stuff. And, these are big holes to come back from it. And fortunately, we're able to come back from a lot of them, but some of them are unrecoverable. And those are good lessons to learn too. So, I've had a $165 million contract almost churn because we had a misalignment in the promise versus the value that they were expecting. Refunds, discounts, we know this hurts us on not only our ARR, but our NRR numbers. If we're having to discount subscriptions just to get them to renew again, then you're kind of chasing, that's the new baseline, what they're expecting to work from there. And, there's the old adage of, one out the back door, you got to replace them with 3 in the front door. And it gets really hard to do, puts a lot of pressure on sales to hit those numbers. And ultimately what we're trying to do is build a sustainable, scalable revenue stream from our install base that is receiving the value and wants to buy more. And that gives the sales team the ability to add on to that. And we just got to keep what we have and protect it. But commission clawbacks and reps dismissed. We've had to change our whole roadmap for entire quarter because one customer said, "You guys promised me this in the sales process," and just completely threw our roadmap off. All sorts of things here. We had a one time in support, we had our whole platform go down, and it was a lot of people relying on that, so it was mission critical. We were out for 3 days as a global outage affecting Oracle, and Microsoft, and we strapped in. We were essentially up for 3 days straight. It's a couple cat naps here, getting the whole platform in our data center rebuilt. So all sorts of different things.
And I'm going to ask your opinion on this. I mean, this isn't pre-scripted, so feel free to defer. But with your personal experience, I've always felt like, to a certain extent, sales, like you get your hand slapped, people make adjustments because you're on the revenue side of the ball. I feel, and maybe this is just my lens is open in some of the maturity that, I've been at this for 20 some odd years now, like yourself. But do you think that the value delivery side, that's what I kind of think about, like customer success. I don't know if customer success is a misnomer to a certain extent, but the value delivery, for selling value and the value delivery side, do you feel like there's any sort of movement towards kind of giving more, I guess, ethos power, if you will, to the, is it always customer success's fault? You know, are we always holding the bag in customer success? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like it's a little jaded in my experience.
It can be, but this is where it's really important. Kind of the mantra within our company is all integrated customer success, right? So everybody in the company needs to be thinking about how do we make our customers successful with our platform and services, right?
Yeah.
So they are getting what they need to solve their business problems. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, often it is kind of left at customer success's feet, but this is where it's important to instill the mental and philosophical approach of what is customer success, and that we're all part of it within a company. Because I'm on the revenue side too, right? I'm all running renewals in a lot of scenarios, right? And I'm responsible for that upsells, cross sells, renewals, and then now I have a CRO. Maybe they're in charge of all new, or sometimes they have renewals too. But ultimately it's all a team sport, and we need to be doing it together. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's so true.
I think it's true. I mean, I think about it even in our small lens at Sturdy. I mean, our CTO feels responsible for delivering value to the customer. So we kind of have the trifecta, like our sales group needs to convey the value. Jonathan Chenard, our head of customer, needs to help deliver the value. But there's the third leg of the stool is also product. Like everybody, we kind of have a mantra here. It's like we build software, we deliver value.
To your point though, we do sit in CS typically in a pretty unique scenario where
Yeah.
I'll typically have 4 or 5 teams that are kind of fall under the CS umbrella. Each one of those have the tools to do the job, but then that instrumentation into what's like ticket systems. You've got professional services where they seeing when they're onboarding customers, and then our CSMs, how are they interacting with the clients? All of that instrumentation or telemetry that's coming back. And it's our job in CS to interpret that. And then I'll actually publish it out to the rest of the E team or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, here's what we're seeing here's what we think that means for product engineering, finance. We're seeing some discounts, or sales. Hey, these things, we're selling these and these are super easy to onboard. We should do more of those. That's our job to interpret and sell, share with the rest of the team.
I love that. I think that's why you and I connected the first time so much. We look at data internally and what the customer, the unabridged, unbiased, unsolicited voice of the customer through this data that was typically inaccessible. So you and I connected on that. We can go through that later, but we have some other things. So let's transition here to some of the tactical stuff. And I think what people can take away from this short, quick hit on Overpromise. By the way, those of you who attended, or if anyone's ever interested, you can contact Mark or I for the slides for this if you want to take it back to the team. But Mark, tell us a little bit about, like, okay, cool. Like, how do you recover? How do you get off that? I think you used the phrase back foot. How do you get off the back foot back on the front foot?
Yeah. I just did a skills class with with one of my clients, and we kind of did. This is some of the basic training that I got when I very first started on the end of a phone. right? And I didn't realize it, but I'm putting it on the slides to prepare for this, and I use it all the time. But the key things here you have to ask yourself as you get into these scenarios, like, all right, we're not here to point fingers. The first thing is that the customer is upset. Something's not aligned with what they're expecting. Now, our customer's always right. We hope so, but you also have to balance this out. So,
Mm.
is the business relationship? You ask yourself, kind of run through these things. If we could run into this overpromise signal, and I love all the signals that come off of Sturdy because this is the stuff that we're trying to interpret and share with the rest of the company. So, is it a business relationship that's recoverable? Like there's some sort of either someone else come in, they're like, look, I'm going to bring my own platform back, this other platform in. It's not recoverable, or we messed up so badly. We sold them something that just doesn't even serve their business case. Sometimes it's the best things like, hey, we recognize, maybe this wasn't the right thing for you. We want you to be happy, and we should let them out of a contract. And they'll be like, you know what, it wasn't the right thing, but we don't have bad things to say about your company, right? So is it recoverable? And then next step is who needs to be involved to resolve it. So on the CS side, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to get finance involved. We need to get the rep involved to see what was involved in the sales cycle. We need to get product engineering involved because they need this widget that does something special and maybe it's on the roadmap. Can we move it forward? Figure out who needs to be involved. And then where in the customer journey, where are they in the customer journey that in onboarding? Have they been installed and then we're 6 months down the road? But figure out who needs to be involved and who's going to own this to the end. Is it your CCO, or is it their CSM, or is it the rep that they identify with, that they can run with, that they're going to engage with to help work through the problem? And then is this a systemic or an isolated incident? Like where did it occur and why did it occur? And then the next step, and this is where we're going to get into kind of the meat of things here, is can we ensure it doesn't happen again? Because if it was a release issue and we keep coding up the same way and we aren't doing the regression testing and they're going to keep getting bugs every time we release, we're going to hit them because they're something mission critical that's affecting them. So we need to remediate that so it doesn't hit them again. And we'll have some from the next couple, 3 slides, we'll get into that sort of stuff. But the key things here are you got to listen until they stop, and you have to empathize with them, meet them where they're at. And then if they can articulate what would make it right for them, and then you need to take that back into your team and say, all right, here's what's going to make it right for them. Does that make financial sense for us? Is it the right thing to do, most importantly? And can we do it on time and to help them solve their business problems? So this requires tight coordination. And when you're doing it, you cannot fail. You have to get it done quickly, but you have to do it right. That's the and key here. It's a mantra to carry forward from some previous organizations. And then you got to go back and remediate. It is not a witch hunt. It's a learning opportunity.
I feel like that the get it done and do it right and bold is kind of like the modern version of that. Like you probably heard that 20 years ago, right? Like however long, I won't date you. But I feel like Amazon's like adopted like still that rigor. It's like commit and deliver. But I mean, there's truth to that. There's value to that, right? So let's keep vibing on sort of the how do we solve this and talk a little bit more about, okay, cool. Like if the expectations of the value, like if we're not aligned at all, if we're just joined, we're broken stick, so to speak, how do we start to approach this, or can you unpack this for us? So I think this stuff's like the real meat of our discussion today.
Yeah. So the last one's how to engage with your client, kind of bring them back. You've got to run that through, fix it, get it done, do it right, get them sorted out, right? So then we need to come back in and figure out what happened, why our expectations and value misaligned. So this is an internal process. And so there's kind of 3 areas. It can either happen upstream from us, something's going on in sales. It can happen in CS, or it could be happening in adjacent functions, product engineering, finance. They all have their own goals and limitations that they can operate within too, right? So if it's happening upstream from us, the key thing here, and this is why I love what you guys are doing with the signals coming in. We have our support systems and the other systems in CS. We need to pull together the data, and then we need to kind of paint a picture of like, all right, what's going on? And so we need to interpret it. Then we need to clearly articulate what's going on. And then we need to come with solutions. And this is like, hey, Joel, we're seeing this happen over and over here, or this was a one-time thing, but it was a big customer. it can be either a systemic thing or an individual isolated incident. We need to come back with the data to you, our sales leader, and say, all right, this is what we're seeing. Here's the data to support it. This is what's happening over and over. And we're getting this overpromise signal. It's either from, this set of individuals or this tier within our sales group or whatever it is. And then I, as a CS leader, need to work with our sales leader to gain alignment and build trust first with you, because sometimes leaders don't know what's going on, or you guys have your own business drivers you're trying to hit. We need to understand those things together. And then often this involves finance. Like, in order to make this right, we'll probably have to do a discount or some services, and we should know and get it back. And then I always say control your own destiny. So if sales has set up some process and you're like, every time they do it, we get these deals, they aren't in our ICP, and the whole it's crushing our team downstairs. Well, we'll go be part of the sales process. And I'm typically very involved in sales deals and my leaders as well, because at a certain point we should be like, you guys are setting it up, and we just kind of help you get it across on up. I consider myself, I'll pass the ball to our sales reps and sales leaders. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you the layup. Here you go. You can slam dunk it. I'm here to help. Right. I'm not the quarterback. I'm the one that kind of helps the quarterback make sure it gets all done. Right. Right. You guys are the winners. But ultimately, we all win as long as we're part of it. We're controlling our destiny. What is it that they should be asking, or what is it that they need to be capturing and passing on to us? It's a partnership.
Yep.
And then so you and I, or my leaders and your leaders, should be meeting at regular checkpoints to provide the feedback. And like, hey, you guys have made the adjustment. This is working great now. In fact, we should go after this type of customer or these sorts of things. And so it's a together thing. And then comes back, it's cheesy, but winning as one team, it makes the momentum wheels spin faster. And it's a lot more enjoyable to work together that way.
We have about 5 minutes left and we have other slides, so I don't want to get too wordy with my description, but I think there's an important piece here. And like one of the takeaways that I got when I was like looking at some of the stuff we were creating in the deck here, in this presentation. And I think I've been living this more so recently with, I started working again with the chief customer officer that joined Sturdy, Scott Jonathan Chenard. He and I've decided we've now worked together for 19 years. So having him in the deal also, I don't want to hand him, and I've worked with other leaders, Deborah Squires when I was at Beamery and others where I've had just, immense respect for, but like, I don't want to hand them a flaming bag, and I want them to be a part of this so they feel like we've had high integrity when the entire process. I think the customer wins, like a high integrity process. There's sort of some checks and balances in a relationship or a partnership too. Like you check the other person. And I feel comfortable saying that. Like, I kind of like to have people along too. It validates what we're selling, and we're selling it the right way. And then we're all together and making that customer successful. Cause at the end of the day, we have a lower cost of acquisition of selling that customer something more. And if the pathway is greased for us, so to speak, or it's smooth without obstacles, I think is a better way to put it, then we're going to get a better reference. We're going to get testimonials. We're going to make people happy. And that brings more revenue and longer term value to the company as well. The company's worth more.
Yeah. Just one last point is,
Yeah.
we all agree on that these clients are where you have to take some risk, and you take more risk earlier on than you do typically later on. And so as long as everyone's aligned to it, you got to take some risks, and we should all just be on board with it. But this slide is about, if the issue's happening in CS, are your models and instrumentation that you're using for load balance, all that stuff, are they set up right? Do we need to make adjustments because we're at a different scale, different stage of growth?
Yeah.
Our teams have too much overhead on them because the tools aren't right. Are they the right skills and competency? Do they have the wrong OKRs and KPIs driving the wrong behaviors now? Maybe they're good last quarter, not this. So where are they focused? Do we have the right structures? It's time to do a reorg. You got to think about these things if they're happening in the CS house.
I think the takeaway that I have here, and I feel like you harp on this for good reason. I mean, I think this is this is one of the, I think, concepts that you really embody. And I haven't heard it as much, but it's like, your business today was here. All too often the business is now here, but the way that you've allocated your resources, the way that you've organized your teams, the way that you're thinking about content, the way that you're thinking about training, if you're not evolving at the same pace, and it doesn't just mean, by the way, I think what I've heard you say is like, it's not just throw another body on the fire. hire more people, like increase your OpEx, just go hire more people. Like it's a fundamental, you have to make adjustments. You have to be like agile.
There's a certain point where you can't scale the bodies to support what you sold linearly with every new account you add a new person. You can't do that. You got to break this up in order to turn profit and support scale. You got to have the right tooling. You got to have the right skills. You have to tease the roles apart at the right time, not to have too much overhead too early on. But it's got to be balanced, and it evolves over time as your business grows.
Yeah. I was on a sales call yesterday, digital marketing company. And it was funny. Well, it wasn't funny. The chief customer officer, now COO, was talking about like, oh, this is what we learned. They're in our portfolio. Like we have the same investors. And they're like, we learned this. And at this stage, when we got to 25 million in revenue, we broke apart, for example, the launch and training. We broke apart this, we broke apart this function and moved it to higher specialization on the post sale side once they've gotten through their 3-month pilot and adoption period or what have you. And it really hit home. Like, yeah, like at that stage, they identified, I'm sure with some pain like everyone else, but it's a good story. Like, yeah, we're not doing this right anymore. We're failing. How do we rejigger things or move the puzzle pieces around?
So this is if it's happening in adjacent functions, we need to understand their why things are happening, right? Like HR says, we've got a hiring freeze right now, or finance is like, we can't make discounts. Like they're doing certain things, or we're giving sales incentives to go do these things because we got to hit some other revenue targets or logo targets or whatever they are. It's important for us to understand why. So it's typically not malicious why they're doing these things, but if they are these other teams feeling the pain because we're on the front lines, and sometimes the teams are just getting crushed. Like our customers, some of them love us, hopefully all of them, but some of them not so much. And maybe we need to bring product and engineering onto these calls so they understand what it's like to stand tall in front of your customer and understand that what we thought worked, what was coded up, isn't actually working. And sometimes just getting them engaged that level is really helpful, and it builds momentum in the adjacent functions. But always come with the data, right? Like we're seeing this signal come in, and we've got the data to support the story, and it's affecting this much revenue and this many customers. And when finance hears this, we're like, we got to fix that, right?
Yep.
And so these are easy stories to tell, but we got to show up with the data. And these are some of the things that Sturdy, I'm just so excited about, because we've been doing these things very kind of manually and building these things, but these signals that come in, you guys have 25 of them. They're fantastic and help support the stories with the data to help guide the business and all the functions.
I think we did it. I think we actually, there's so Mark and I had our time. I'll leave folks with this, and I want to give Mark a little bit of an audience, a stage just to talk about how folks can reach out to him. But he and I had so much content that we were like, yeah, this is like, we could do this for 2 hours. And Alex, our head of marketing, was kind of like, you guys can't talk for 2 hours. No one cares. No one wants to do it. But anyway, Mark, this has been amazing. And I'm so glad that we're aligned on this stuff. And it's great that you're, I know, a resource for us at Sturdy. But tell folks there out that are going to see this now or watching live and maybe see catch this somewhere where they're looking for tips and tactics and want to get ahead of things. How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so you can reach me at mark.jauregui or just mark@integratedcustomersuccess.com. Comes directly to me. I'm available on LinkedIn. Here's a link as well, or just go to www.integratedcustomersuccess.com. Send it. I think there's an info link there. You can connect up with us. But we have a quick discovery assessment process, and it's not about doing our specific thing for you. We take into account what's going on in your business, your specific business type, and where you are in the stage of growth. And so getting those things aligned for you, especially, a lot of people have made a lot of cuts, very hard decisions. You still have to fix the problems, and you've got to align, make sure your customers are receiving the value that was promised early on, or you're going to have sort of destable revenue. And we want to help you out.
I really appreciate you helping us out and giving us some of your expertise and sharing it with folks that follow both of our companies. I'll thank the audience for attending today. Just a quick plug for Sturdy. If you're not familiar with us, you can visit us at sturdy.ai. more and more what we're becoming is sort of bringing AI and the reality of using AI, democratizing it essentially and bringing it to life. It's accessible these days. You can do some amazing things. It'll work for your business. But using data that's been hiding in plain sight to help solve some of the problems that Mark and I talked about is really what we're about. And you can read a lot about us on the website. Aug's done a great job of telling our story there. So thanks everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, clearly you probably know how to reach us now. And Mark, thanks again. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Thanks everybody for joining. Bye.